Hello and welcome to Drama Recaps. Today we will delve into the 2013 biographical drama film called 12 Years a Slave. Spoilers ahead. Based on a true story. The movie starts with scenes of men and women laboring in sugarcane fields on a plantation. They sleep on hard floors and eat their morning meals together. Among these people is Solomon Northup, who has crafted a makeshift pen and ink. He wants to write a letter but finds the ink too watery. While others sleep, Solomon recalls memories of his wife. Flashback time. Solomon is a free black man and a talented musician. He performs at special occasions. He has 2 young kids and a loving wife at home. His wife goes away for 3 weeks for a cooking job to earn extra money. The year is 1841. A white man approaches Solomon, introducing him to his friends, Mr. Brown and Mr. Hamilton. They offer Solomon a job for his musical skills. Solomon joins Brown and Hamilton for a gig in Washington. After the performance, they all go to a restaurant to celebrate. The next thing he knows, Solomon wakes up, chained on a bare floor. He recalls feeling ill after having a drink with them. Back to the present, white men enter Solomon's cell. He tells them he is a free man from Saratoga, but they think he's a fugitive slave from Georgia. They beat him up as punishment. Solomon tries to shout for help, but nobody hears him. Clean clothes are given to him, but he doesn't eat, hoping Brown and Hamilton will return. 2 other men, Clemens and John, tell him that he's been sold. Randall's mom and sister are also there, tricked into captivity like him. Slave traders warn them to remain silent during the journey. They first move them by cart, then by ship. Another slave warns Solomon to keep his reading and writing skills a secret to stay safe. Solomon, Clemens, and John plan a revolt to seize control of the ship, but the others, born into slavery, refuse to join the rebellion. Eliza is awakened by a crew member with intentions of taking her. At that moment, a revolt starts, but it quickly ends when John is killed and thrown into the sea. Solomon realizes the rebellion won't succeed. When they reach port, Clemens is reunited with his previous owner, and he's overjoyed, hugging him tightly. Solomon and the others are prepared for sail. Among them is a slave named Jasper. Solomon recalls a memory of being in a store with his wife, where he saw Jasper being led away by his owner. Now, Solomon is renamed Platt. They are all ready for the marketplace. Soon, wealthy men arrive to buy slaves. One of the buyers is William Ford, who purchases Platt and Eliza. Realizing she'll never see her kids again, Eliza breaks down. To suit the tension, Platt plays the violin. They are then taken to the Ford family mansion. Learning of Eliza's separation from her children, Mrs. Ford seems sympathetic. Ford instructs Mr. Chapin, the overseer, to look after them and prepare for their move to the plantation. John Tibiatz, Ford's main carpenter, tells them to call him Lord and clap their hands. During the workday, the slaves are engaged in hard labor, and during breaks, Ford reads prayers to them. Back to work, Platt suggests an efficient way to move goods on the river. John mocks him, thinking slaves can't think. But Ford listens and lets Platt put his plan into action. Impressed, Ford shakes Platt's hand and later gives him a violin as a gift. Meanwhile, Eliza can't stop crying over her lost children. Platt tries to console her, saying Mr. Ford is kind, but it doesn't help. Soon, Mrs. Ford gets annoyed by her constant sobbing. John Tibiatz starts picking on Platt for trivial reasons, clearly disliking him. Suddenly, Platt sees Eliza being led into the woods by 2 men. He remembers her mentioning a past owner who deeply cared for her. Eliza had once lived in comfort, having a daughter with her former master. However, the master's eldest daughter couldn't stand them and tried to push them away. On the plantation, John Tibiatz continues to provoke Platt, who finally snaps and fights back. Chapin steps in and tells Platt to stay on the estate for his own safety. John rushes to retaliate, but Chapin stops him again, even drawing a gun to emphasize his point. All the while, Platt is left in a vulnerable state, with only a young girl offering him water. Mr. Ford arrives in the evening, freeing Platt and taking him to his home. Ford informs Platt that Tibiats is in hiding and seeks revenge. Platt is now to be given to Ford's friend Edwin Epps, despite Platt's protest that he is a free man. Ford feels helpless. Epps is cruel, but the only one willing to take a rebellious slave. Epps is highly religious and uses the Bible to justify slavery. He warns his slaves against disobedience. On Epps's plantation, they pick cotton under constant watch. A young slave girl named Patsy outperforms everyone else, earning the title, Queen of Fields, from her master. Patsy crafts dolls from plant stems during her free time. In the night, Epps orders Platt to play the violin and others to dance. Suddenly, Mrs. Epps throws a bottle at Patsy. She wants her husband to sell Patsy, but he refuses, saying he'd rather part with his wife. Mrs. Epps sends Platt to the market and notices he can read, which she dislikes. She tells him he's no better than the other slaves. Platt thinks about escaping but changes his mind when he encounters guards who are set to dispose of other slaves. He completes the shopping list as Mrs. Epps asked. One day, Mr. Epps sends Platt to Mr. Shaw's to fetch Patsy. Mrs. Shaw offers him tea and Platt learns she was once a slave but now enjoys a different life as a mistress. She advises Patsy to use her special position wisely. Epps dislikes Platt talking to Patsy and attempts to chase him, but Platt outruns him. Epps tripped and fell, quickly tiring himself out. He asked for Platt's help to stand up, only to attack him once more. Mary stepped in, learning that the issue involved Patsy. That night, Epps took liberties with Patsy he should only take with his wife. The following day, Platt went shopping again and on the way back, decided to swipe a sheet of paper from Mary so he could write a letter. In the evening, Mary offered cookies to all the slaves, except for Patsy. She continued to insist to her husband that Patsy had to go, claiming Epps had gone soft for defending his own slave. That night, Patsy woke Platt, asking him to end her life, as she couldn't bear it any longer. Platt declined, unwilling to carry that sin. Epps' plantation later faced ruin from the cotton bollworm infestation. Epps saw it as divine punishment and blamed his slaves, punishing them severely. To make some money, he lent his slaves to Judge Turner for a time. While there, Platt attempted to make ink from berries. Judge Turner was impressed by Platt's skills, inviting him to play the violin at a party, allowing him to keep the money he earned. That night, Platt etched the names of his wife and children onto his violin. At the jubilant party, Platt played his violin as guests enjoyed themselves. Eventually, it was time to return to Epps' plantation. There, a more traumatized Patsy was still the hardest worker. Armsby, a white man, was disappointing Epps by picking too little cotton. That evening, Armsby told Platt that he was once an overseer, but lost it all to whiskey. He was hoping to save money and go back home. Platt, seeing an opportunity, decided to give his violin-earned savings to Armsby in exchange for a favor. Armsby would need to drop a letter into a mailbox in town and keep quiet about it. They agreed to meet in 2 days. Platt wrote the letter that very night, but when Epps arrived later to inspect the slaves, Platt realized Armsby had betrayed him. Platt convinced Epps that Armsby was just a deceitful drunk trying to become an overseer again by sowing doubt between Epps and his slaves. Epps chose to trust Platt, then destroyed the letter. A slave fainted on the plantation and despite efforts to resuscitate him, he passed away. The other slaves had to bury him. He had been a good man who always cared for others. Samuel, an employee, argued with Epps, stating that slavery was the highest form of evil and all men are equal in God's eyes. One day, Epps would have to answer for his actions. Epps, of course, didn't agree, viewing the slaves as his property. During the day, Epps couldn't locate Patsy. He questioned other slaves but no one had seen her. He assumed she'd run away. But then he saw her returning from Mr. Shaw's plantation, which angered him. Platt defended Patsy, but got struck for it. Patsy revealed that she had gone to Mrs. Shaw for soap since Mary didn't provide any. Despite her hard work, all Patsy wanted was to be clean. Epps punished her severely. Mrs. Shaw later came to tend to Patsy's wounds. Witnessing this, Platt was moved to tears and broke his fiddle. While working, Platt talked with Samuel, who revealed he was from Canada. Platt then disclosed that he was not a slave. Samuel was shocked to hear this. Despite past betrayals, Platt asked for Samuel's help in writing a letter. If his family could send proof of his free status, he could be freed. Samuel agreed to help. One day, a law officer arrived at Epps' house and asked Platt for his true name. Upon learning he was a free man, Solomon was declared free. Epps tried to dispute it but had no authority to. Before leaving forever, Solomon hugged Patsy, relieved that his 12-year nightmare was over. He met his family, accompanied by his loyal friend Mr. Parker. He was emotional upon seeing his wife and grown-up children. His daughter, now a mother, had named her son Solomon. The family was reunited.